left lanes is like they're about to drive off. Low 80s for the high today. Chance of some afternoon showers going up to a 70 to 100% chance tonight. Moving in from west to east around 8, 9 o'clock tonight. And it's going to move off to the coast as it moves east to around maybe midnight or 1. So it's going to be several hours that we're going to be dealing with this. Some high winds, maybe some hail, some isolated tornadoes. Keep it here for the latest 75 right now.
Support comes from Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods. Texas family owned and operated since 1962. Offering wine, spirits, and gourmet bites, including whiskey pecan pie for the Thanksgiving holiday. SpecsOnline.com. The fun starts here.
Listen anywhere. We're streaming live online at HoustonPublicMedia.org. It's KUHF Houston News 88.7. A service of the University of Houston. 9 o'clock.
We hear a lot about the carbon footprint of a business, of an industry, of a city. But what about an area's carbon hoofprint? I'm Michael Haggerty filling in for Craig Cohen, and today on Houston Matters, measuring how bad beef can be for the environment. It turns out the pounds of CO2 emitted per pound of meat at retail varies widely from city to city. So we'll find out how Houston's carbon hoofprint compares to other areas and talk with some local farmers who are trying to minimize that effect.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is a production of Houston Public Media with support from Baylor College of Medicine.
Also ahead this hour, we learn what technology will be hot this holiday season in our monthly check-in with columnist Dwight Silverman. And we'll discuss how sports leagues go about deciding when their seasons will be, and all the other developments in Houston sports with Jeff Balke, co-host of the Bleav in Astros podcast. We'll start, though, with a news update from NPR and News 88.7. Stay with us.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. Russia says it's waiting to see how U.S.-Ukraine peace talks develop before responding. Washington and Kyiv say they've drafted an updated and refined proposal after an earlier version drew criticism for favoring Moscow. NPR's Charles Maines reports.
At a meeting with his Security Council, Putin was asked to comment on widespread media reports of the U.S. peace plan. Kremlin leader confirmed Russia had received the U.S. proposal, adding he thought it could be the basis for a lasting settlement. Yet Putin cautioned that the U.S. had not discussed its ideas substantively with Russia, arguing it likely meant the White House had yet to convince Ukraine to accept terms. Putin also insisted Moscow would achieve its objectives in Ukraine either way, pointing to recent Russian gains on the battlefield. Critics of the U.S. plan say it tilts heavily in Russia's favor, with calls for Ukraine to cede territory, cap its military, and renounce ambitions to join NATO. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani is defending his recent meeting with President Trump, saying he's ready to work with the administration on issues facing New Yorkers, including high prices and a shortage of affordable housing. Speaking outside of a church in Queens on Sunday, Mamdani said there's one area he will not cooperate with the White House: immigration.
City government can be in touch with the federal government on around 170 serious crimes. The concern comes from beyond those crimes. The many New Yorkers who at this moment are being arrested, they're being detained, they're being deported for the crime of showing up to a regular court appearance.
On NBC's Meet the Press, Mamdani said he still believes Trump is a threat to democracy, but added that he's willing to find ways to work with him to help New Yorkers. Stocks on Wall Street opened higher at the start of a holiday-shortened trading week. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose about 100 points in early trading.
Investors are growing more optimistic that the Federal Reserve will lower interest rates again when policymakers meet in a couple of weeks. Comments by prominent Fed officials in recent days suggest worries about the job market could be outweighing concerns about stubborn inflation. That makes a rate cut more likely. Now that air traffic controllers and TSA agents are getting paychecks again, they'll be busy this week as millions of holiday travelers take to the skies. The FAA is forecasting its busiest Thanksgiving season in 15 years, while the TSA expects nearly 18 million people to pass through its checkpoints. The stock market will be closed for the holiday on Thursday, and Friday's trading session will end early. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Stocks are continuing to trade higher on Wall Street at this hour. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 77 points. The Nasdaq Composite trading sharply higher, up 404. The S&P 500 up 62 points. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Imaginable Futures, envisioning a future where learning sparks opportunity and thriving belongs to everyone. Learn more at imaginablefutures.com. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. The Supreme Court is weighing whether Texas can use recently redrawn congressional maps. On Friday, Justice Samuel Alito put a temporary pause on a ruling from a panel of federal judges in El Paso. They ruled that the maps passed over the summer were invalid. However, Alito put a temporary stop on the ruling after Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton appealed. For now, the maps that gave Republicans an advantage in next year's midterms remain in effect, pending another ruling from the Supreme Court. A Houston police officer is recovering after being shot during an apparent act of road rage while on his way to work. News 88.7's Rob Salinas has details.
The incident took place Saturday evening in northwest Houston. According to HPD Chief Noe Diaz, Officer Jake Parker was in his personal vehicle on Gessner when a man in another vehicle approached him on foot.
He got out of his vehicle, fired into the officer's vehicle. The officer returned fire. The officer was in his uniform. He, however, did not have his vest.
Officer Parker was shot in the shoulder and drove himself less than a half mile to the police substation where he was treated before being taken to Memorial Hermann. A Hedwig Village police officer spotted the suspect vehicle. Officers closed in and arrested 2 men and a woman. They also recovered a weapon. I'm Rob Salinas, News 88.7.
Millions of Texans are on the move this week for Thanksgiving. AAA says a record number of motorists will be on the road. DPS Trooper Sergeant Stephen Woodward says excessive speed is still the biggest safety issue on the highway.
We haven't had a deathless day here in the state of Texas since November the 7th, 2000. That was the last time we had a deathless day right here in the state.
According to AAA, the busiest days for motorists are tomorrow and Wednesday. Return travel is also expected to be heavy on Sunday. A fire ripped through the decommissioned PHR Preakers power plant along Highway 146 in Galveston County last week. Some residents in the area say they were still cleaning up soot and scraps from their homes and yards several days later. If you were affected by the fire, we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, photos, and videos by emailing news@houstonpublicmedia.org. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Michael Haggerty, filling in today for Craig Cohen. Good morning. Coming up this hour, we've heard about limiting your carbon footprint, but what about limiting your carbon hoofprint? Plus, what technology might be hot for holiday shopping this year? And as one professional sports league with a team in Houston considers a radical shift in when it plays its games, we consider how and why sports seasons happen when they do. But first, in case you missed the news late last week, after a panel of federal judges in El Paso ruled Tuesday that the recently redrawn Texas congressional maps were based on racial gerrymandering, on Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court temporarily blocked that ruling. Here to help us understand what it all means is News 88.7's politics and government reporter Andrew Schneider. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
So when that order from El Paso came down last Tuesday, the Texas government immediately appealed to the Supreme Court, and then this ruling came down on Friday, signed by Justice Samuel Alito, who's the justice who handles the emergency appeals from Texas. What exactly was the ruling then?
The ruling was that the injunction blocking the Texas 2025 redistricting map from going into effect would be temporarily stayed, and it gives the plaintiffs until 5 p.m. Eastern time today, that's 4 p.m. Central time, in order to file a response.
So this is temporary. What happens next?
Well, the order signed by Justice Samuel Alito will remain in place for at least the next few days while the court considers whether to allow the new map favorable to Republicans to be used in the midterm elections or not.
Yeah, so while we wait on this ruling, and imagine the Thanksgiving holiday could draw that out some, but who's to say? So explain what maps might get used in which scenario, depending on how the court rules.
If the Supreme Court sides with Texas, then the map the legislature adopted this past summer will be effective for the March primary election and thus for the general election next fall. If it sides with the plaintiffs who brought the original suit, Texas would be forced to hold elections using the map drawn by the GOP-controlled legislature in 2021 based on the 2020 census.
Any sense as how the court might rule on this?
It's always difficult to read the court's mind. The court's conservative majority has blocked similar lower court rulings because they have come too close to elections. The order came about an hour after the state called on the high court to intervene to avoid confusion as congressional primary elections approach in March, with early voting starting middle of February.
Yeah, so primaries in March and filing deadlines coming up relatively soon. What does this temporary stay mean for some of the candidates and, of course, voters, even election administrators who are trying to plan the 2026 election?
It's creating some confusion. We've already seen how at least one of the affected candidates is handling it. Congressman Al Green, is a Democrat, was drawn out of the 9th congressional district, which he's represented for more than 2 decades, and into the 18th congressional district, which is currently subject to a special election runoff that's going to be taking place at the end of January. He's responded first by declaring that he'd run in the Democratic primary for the 18th, then with a press conference saying he would decide which district to run on based on how the Supreme Court acts. On the other side, Cindy Siegel, chair of the Harris County Republican Party, has said some Republican candidates may now have to consider withdrawing their application or filing again. She's worried there won't be enough time for her office to process the applications of candidates who withdraw and refile for new offices.
Any possibility that the state might have to delay its filing deadline or change move the goalposts at all to handle all this?
Well, it's not clear legally how or whether the state could delay its filing deadline. That deadline is coming up fast. That's December 8th, and that doesn't leave a whole lot of time for the Supreme Court to resolve this.
What are you going to be watching for this week or next as this case develops?
Well, at this point, the decision is entirely in the hands of the full U.S. Supreme Court. We can only wait to hear what they have to say on this. And as you said, it's not clear whether they'll act before or after Thanksgiving.
More of the waiting game. Andrew Schneider covers politics and government for Houston Public Media. Andrew, thanks.
You're welcome.
Last week, 2 inmates died in the Harris County Jail, according to a spokesperson for the Harris County Sheriff's Office. Houston Public Media reporter Sarah Grunau has been following the story and joins us now. Sarah, good morning.
Good morning.
So what do we know about these people who died and what happened?
Yeah, so 63-year-old Kerry Parks was pronounced dead just after 5 a.m. on Wednesday after he suffered a medical emergency. He was transported to St. Joseph Medical Center in Houston. As with most of these investigations, many of the details that we know are still pretty unclear while investigations are being conducted in the background. What we do know is that he was previously in the custody of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, facing a life sentence for a 2013 conviction. So he was actually transported back to Houston for a court hearing this June and remained in the Harris County Jail waiting for a transfer back to the state facility when he actually suffered the medical emergency. And the other death was 66-year-old Tony Davis, who was in the jail's custody for about 2 weeks before he died also on Wednesday. He was originally transported from the jail to a local hospital and released back to the jail just before 7 p.m. that day. But about 45 minutes after he got back, he had a medical emergency and was pronounced dead inside the jail.
You said these are being investigated.
Yeah, the deaths are being investigated by the Texas Rangers. The sheriff's office also conducts their own investigation to determine whether all applicable policies were followed.
How many people have died in custody in the Harris County Jail so far this year?
Yeah, that would be 18 in custody jail deaths in Harris County this year.
How does that compare to last year and other years?
So deaths inside the Harris County Jail did see a pretty significant rise this year compared to last year when only about 10 people died. In 2023, that number was 19, and in 2022, it was 27.
While we've got you here, we want to check in on another story you've been following. On Thursday last week, Harris County commissioners were scheduled to appoint a replacement for County Attorney Christian Menefee, who resigned back in March after declaring he was going to run for Texas's 18th congressional district. But he remains in that attorney role in an acting capacity. I mean, a replacement still has not been named last week. Why not?
Yeah, so last week, commissioners were scheduled to have two meetings, actually, a business court meeting and a special meeting right after that. The business meeting was very abrupt, lasting only about 3 minutes after very little discussion. Those meetings are pretty standard procedure and typically don't last very long. But the special meeting, which was only scheduled to discuss the county attorney's position, didn't happen because of scheduling conflicts with both commissioners and County Judge Lena Hidalgo.
When might the commissioners try again, and are there any viable candidates who could get the 3 votes that are needed to get appointment?
Yeah, so there's still a lot of unknowns right now, but I've only seen discussions about what to do with the county attorney's position pop up in pretty recent commissioners' court agendas. It's likely commissioners really just haven't been able to settle on a viable candidate to backfill Menifee's position in the meantime. The clock is ticking down. I know Andrew mentioned the next December 8th deadline, I believe, for the Democratic candidates to file for next year's primary election. And that's 3 days before their next scheduled meeting, which is on December 11th. So the clock is ticking down for them. It still remains to be seen, really, what viable candidates there might be. The next most likely county appointment could be possibly Jonathan Fombon, who currently serves as the deputy county attorney. It's still unclear whether or not he would even accept that appointment. A couple candidates have lined up for the county attorney's position next year, like Jacqueline Lucy Smith, who's a former civil court judge who once worked in the county attorney's office. Also, civil court judge Audrey Lawton Evans has filed her interest in the position. As for now, though, a lot is still up in the air, and I think it's likely that we will hear other candidates announce their intentions to run for the position next year.
Well, you can find Sarah Grunau's reporting on these stories and others at houstonpublicmedia.org. Sarah, thanks as always.
Thank you.
Just ahead, determining the effect of beef on the environment and how some farmers are trying to change that as Houston Matters continues.
Hi, I'm Lenny Ambrose from St. Arnold Brewing Company, proud supporters of Houston Public Media. Right now, with your $60 donation, you can choose tickets to News and Brews. This member-exclusive event takes place February 17th. Enjoy a pint, connect with fellow NPR fans, and meet the Houston Public Media newsroom in person. Select News and Brews tickets when you donate at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Folks. I'm Kai Rizdal, a record store owner we know. Next time on Marketplace.
It's tonight at 6:30.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro. Introducing Metro Downtown Direct, helping riders get home for the holidays with non-stop service between downtown and Bush Intercontinental Airport. Details at ridemetro.org/500.
And from Baylor College of Medicine, with 125 years of innovation behind it, Baylor has driven progress in health and medicine through research, education, and care that push the frontiers of modern science.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Michael Haggerty in for Craig Cohen. We hear a lot about limiting the carbon footprint of a business, of an industry, of a city even, but what about an area's carbon hoofprint? Basically, a carbon hoofprint is a way of measuring how bad beef can be for the environment. It turns out the pounds of CO2 emitted per pound of meat at retail can vary wildly from city to city, according to a study recently published in the journal Nature Climate Change. To learn more about this and to find out how Houston's carbon hoofprint compares to other areas, Houston Matters producer Joshua Zinn talked with one of the authors of the study, Ben Goldstein. He's from the University of Michigan, who explains how they went about determining this hoofprint.
In the study, we looked at the hoofprint of the cities as a whole. What's the hoofprint for all of the people that live in the city, and also to compare between cities because they have different sizes and a different number of people. We also looked at the hoofprint per person. So to do that, we need a few different pieces of information. The first is we need to have an idea of how much meat people consume. So we have information from dietary surveys that are carried out across the United States. We have the population of the different cities. So if we know how much meat is consumed per person, beef, chicken, and pork, for different types of populations based on race, based on income. And then we combine that with census data, we can guess how much meat is being consumed in different cities. The second piece is knowing where the meat comes from. So we have data on how much different slaughterhouses and processing centers, how much meat they produce. We know how much beef cattle, how many chickens, how many pigs, and how many dairy cattle are raised in different counties across the United States. And we know how much animal feed each animal needs. And we know how much animal feed is produced across the United States for each county. And we can connect all of those three together using a model to balance supply and demand across those different pieces of the supply chain and understand where, with a pretty good degree of confidence, a city is sourcing their meat from, where those slaughterhouses are sourcing their animals from, and where those animals are probably sourcing their feed from. That's the second piece. And then the third piece is to know what are the actual greenhouse gas emissions along those different parts of the supply chain. And we have data on that too, that then once we combine it all together, we can look at each individual city, have an idea of where they get their meat from, and what the environmental impacts from producing that meat are.
And so what were the major takeaways from this study after you collected all of this data and put it all together?
Three major takeaways. The first is that urban and rural livelihoods are intimately interconnected, right? So this is something we knew, but this is now, with the model that we have, something that we can actually concretely show, right? We can actually see which cities are connected to which regions of the country that are producing their feed and their meat. And I think this really is a powerful message in an era of increasing urban and rural polarization, increasing political polarization, to show that, hey, you know what, our livelihoods are intimately intertwined, and we should keep that in mind when we're thinking about different types of problems that we're facing, environmental problems and other types of problems, that, you know, we have to work together to solve these. The second is that the carbon hoofprint of a given city, it varies a lot. So a person that lives in the upper Midwest that is getting a lot of their beef from dairy cattle will have a lower carbon hoofprint than people in other parts of the country that are getting beef from dedicated beef herds. And so where you eat meat and where it's sourced from matters. That said, beef is always still the largest component of any individual's hoofprint. And so by switching from beef to chicken or pork, or heaven forbid tofu, will actually give you some pretty good reductions in your hoofprint. And then the last and third takeaway is that in some parts of the country, which have mild climates and already have fairly low carbon energy grids to produce their electricity, the hoofprint can rival the same scale of emissions as people have from heating, cooling, and electrifying their homes, right? And so the hoofprint is actually a pretty powerful lever to reduce people's personal carbon emissions. And so, you know, if we are telling people to go and put solar panels on their houses and to do energy retrofits that cost tens of thousands of dollars, and you should do that if you have the means to. But if you don't have the means to do that, or you want to do even more, then also, you know, tinkering with your diet can be just as effective. And when I say tinkering, I'm not telling you to go vegan or vegetarian or even stop eating beef, but, you know, even just switching half of your beef and putting it into chicken and pork instead will have a pretty good benefit for the climate and probably for your wallet and your health.
You know, one thing that I think gets brought up a lot is, you know, people can recycle and reuse and do all the things they want, but there's also like large corporations who are doing things on a much larger scale that obviously would have a much bigger impact. So, I mean, are there things that can happen at that larger scale as well that could also potentially reduce the impacts of these carbon hoofprints?
I think we all have a collective responsibility. We can't abrogate all responsibility and say, oh, whatever, it's the corporations, I can't change anything, like it doesn't matter. I think we do make choices about what we eat on a daily basis, and we can eat in more sustainable and healthier ways. That said, I agree that there is a large industry that is geared towards getting people to eat more animal protein, and more animal protein than they certainly need. The average American eats 5 servings of beef a week. That is well beyond and above what anyone needs to eat in terms of beef. You could argue that no one needs to eat any beef. I've written that article before. It does not move the needle at all. And again, I come back to beef because it is the most environmentally intensive. It takes the most land, it takes the most nutrients, it takes the most water, it creates the most greenhouse gas emissions. So there are some things that companies still can do. For instance, combining grazing of cattle with photovoltaics, for instance, can be a way to do this. They call this agrivoltaics, where you actually have the cattle using the same land that you have solar farms on, so that you get multiple uses out of the land. You can also graze cattle on marginal agricultural land that you can't really grow crops on. If it's done in a ecologically sensitive manner, you can actually improve the soil health. There's also what we feed the cows that matters. For instance, those studies that have shown that if you feed cattle seaweed, they have less gas, so that leads to less burping, less farting, right? Is less methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas. I think more broadly, not lobbying for people to eat so much meat, not trying to push the different agencies to try and promote meat in diets. I think that would be a more holistic vision, so that people don't feel like they need as much meat in their diets. It's at odds with broader sustainability. There's a lot of evidence in the literature to suggest this.
That was Ben Goldstein. He's an assistant professor of environment and sustainability at the University of Michigan. He spoke with Houston Matters producer Joshua Zinn. And now to hear from some local farmers who are trying to minimize the state's carbon footprint. Treasure Hance is the co-founder of The Farm at Bald Hill. It's a farm near Lufkin that's dedicated to regenerative agriculture and sustainability. Treasure, welcome to Houston Matters.
Thank you.
Glad to have
you.
you.
So much.
And you can join our conversation by calling or texting 713-440-8870 or with an email to talk@houstonmatters.org or by commenting on our live stream on the Houston Public Media YouTube channel. Have you considered altering your beef intake and purchasing habits to affect the environment? We'd enjoy hearing from you. Again, it's 713-440-8870 or talk@houstonmatters.org. Treasure, can you just explain for us what regenerative agriculture is and how it differs from the way things maybe have always been done?
Yeah, so prior to the Industrial Revolution, pretty much regenerative agriculture was historically the way people farmed. It's a focus on soil health, which creates healthy forage for animals. You get healthy soil by rotating your animals regularly, multi-species grazing. So having pigs, chickens, cows, sheep, everyone kind of rotating in a pattern and rotating how they would graze naturally, not staying on the land for too long. No inputs, no pesticides, herbicides, fungicides on the land. So the animals do what they're meant to do. They graze, the pigs rut, the chickens scratch, and they're all just working in conjunction, kind of like nature's landscapers, basically. With that, you create a very healthy soil, which creates healthy forage, which creates healthy, clean animals, creating healthy, clean proteins for people. Studies have shown that regenerative agriculture practices actually sequester carbon from the atmosphere. Most regenerative farmers are going to be more small scale as opposed to, a lot of the centralized feeding animal operations that are what you hear of feedlots, which is where these greenhouse gases typically all come from. It's animals raised in confined areas, fed grain, and just really living in unhealthy conditions.
You kind of touched on this in the umbrella of that, but can you give me some zero in specifically on what that looks like when it comes to raising livestock like cattle specifically?
How we rotate?
Yeah, and then how it's regenerative agriculture when it comes to cattle. What is involved in that?
Yeah, so it is all about rotating your animals, the grazing patterns. When cows are in regenerative agriculture, when you move your animals, you let the land rest. So you're not overgrazing land so that you have that great biodiverse soil that really has a chance to sequester carbon, has a chance to heal, and the cows are moving regularly. So they're not in these confined operations. And then by incorporating other species, you have, the nitrogen from the chicken poop is super healthy for the soil, and you rotate that, and the pigs, and, everyone just really works in conjunction.
And so how long have you been operating your farm this way?
We started about 8 years ago. We started out with just 4 cows with the intention of incorporating other animals. We raise, now we do grass-fed and finished beef and lamb, pastured pork, pastured chicken, and pastured eggs. So we have chickens, sheep, pigs, cows, all on the property, and rotate them all regularly. We added chicken about 2 years ago, and we've been selling at farmers markets. It took us several years to have soil samples come back that we were happy with before we felt comfortable to really graze on the land.
I know that economics are always a motivator for everything, really, but and farmers often struggle with making ends meet and that sort of thing. One of the reasons, I imagine, not as a farmer, but I assume that one of the motivations for operating those large feedlots is for volume and to increase the profit margin. Is farming like you're talking about on a smaller scale, more varied livestock and all that, going to produce less income? Is that a challenge or is it a misnomer?
I don't know any farmer who gets into it because they want to make money. We connect with community. We provide healthy foods for people, for our community. We get to eat really well, but honestly, bottom line, no, it's hard to really grow a profit without that scalability. But saying that, if people shop local and support more local farms, then we will have more local farms, and there will be more access to good quality food, as well as, the farmers will feel more supported, bottom line.
So you agree with what our professor said a minute ago about, say, one way to affect this is to, if you're not going to reduce the amount of beef specifically that you ingest or you purchase, to support the local farm and then buy different beef, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, and yeah, Americans eat too much meat. I mean, I'm a livestock farmer, and I never liked meat. I was pretty much vegetarian for a very long time. I eat beef. I eat all of our proteins often now, and I feel stronger physically and mentally than I've ever felt in my life, consuming as much meat as I do. But I'm not eating a T-bone steak every meal, or a triple burger, a cheeseburger. It's like really limiting it, but making sure you're getting really good quality too, where the upfront cost will be more if you're buying from a reputable farm. You're getting better quality meat, but you're going to pay for it one way or the other. You'll pay for it in health costs later in life, or you're going to pay for it, you'll pay for it upfront now on your bill. And just the health benefits of buying animals that are produced with minimal inputs is, offsets the financial cost. And the farmers markets that we are involved in, Urban Harvest in Houston and the Galveston farmers markets, which is now Groundswell, both of those take SNAP dollars, and they do a match with that. So there are, and a lot of these, a lot of farmers will work with people who are on a tighter budget. You just have to get to know who you're buying your meat from, who you're buying your produce from, and you build that relationship and that connection. And it really is a meaningful community to be part of.
Speaking of community, I mean, how big of a practice is it, or the scene, I guess, farms like yours, are they, how common are they in Texas? And is it, are more sprouting up, to acknowledge that pun?
Yes. And it also depends on where you live. We are in East Texas. We're seeing more and more pop up here. I know Central Texas, Austin area, there are more regenerative farms in that area. And actually, Force of Nature Meats just opened the first ever regenerative focused restaurant So there's a restaurant called Neon Armadillo that opened in Wimberley that is using specifically regeneratively raised meats. So I feel like there is a movement. More and more people are supporting sustainable regenerative agriculture, local producers. It's, it's spreading for sure. And it's also less expensive to raise animals this way because you don't have the inputs. You're not paying for pesticides. You're not paying for feed for your cattle. I mean, they're eating grass, which is on your pasture, and you just take care of it. And by not adding those inputs, you have more forage for the animals.
Had this email from Alex. He said, I just need my veggie-based diet to be less expensive than a meat-inclusive one. A burger costs $10, but a salad or wrap from the spot next door costs $20. Any thoughts or response to that?
So repeat that question then.
Yeah, I mean,
he's a vegetarian, but he's talking about the vegetables cost more?
Yeah, or a salad costing a lot more than, say, a burger can be cheap. It depends on where you're having that burger, of course. But yeah, just comparing those costs, I guess.
So I think that if you're getting perhaps the salads organic and, and the meat that you're talking about is from a feedlot. I mean, we sell ground beef $12 a pound, and you can get, a burger, 2 burgers, 3 burgers, 4, depending on how many pounds you want that. So I think just learning to balance it with enough of the, enough vegetables and enough protein is really important. I mean, personally, I feel like I know I need protein. I need animal proteins in my diet because I feel better than when I was eating a vegetarian-based diet.
Last question here. I mean, Texas is known for being the biggest producer of beef in the country, one of the biggest consumers of beef. Can the sustainable practices of farms like yours match up to the sheer size and demand of the industry here?
That is a big discussion that I hear at conferences and through other farmers and articles I read. If everyone went back to eating more of a locally based seasonal diet, then yes, I feel like it is achievable. And also, like I said at the beginning of our conversation, actually looking at how much meat you are consuming and making sure it's in alignment with how much your body really needs.
Treasure Hance is the co-founder of The Farm at Bald Hill, a farm near Lufkin that's dedicated to regenerative agriculture and sustainability. Treasure, thanks so much for talking with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Just ahead, what technology will be hot for holiday shopping this year? We discuss the latest in consumer technology with columnist Dwight Silverman as Houston Matters continues.
You count on Houston Public Media. That's why you're here right now. Take the next step and become a new member today. Every gift makes a difference. And with a gift of $5 a month or more, you'll receive PBS Passport, a member benefit that lets you stream more of the shows you love anytime. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. Join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Enjoy an evening of connection and community. As a thank you, you'll receive a Houston Public Media pint glass at the event to toast the new year. Celebrate the holidays and grab your ticket now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Discovery Green Conservancy and Green Mountain Energy, presenting ICE, Houston's outdoor ice skating rink. Open through February 16th at Discovery Green. More information at discoverygreen.com.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is made possible in part by Ellen Benninghoven and Dr. Michael Schaefer, with gifts from listeners like you.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Michael Haggerty, and today for Craig Cohen. Good morning. This is the big week where American consumerism goes into overdrive, or maybe a sunnier way to put that is the magic of the holiday shopping season will be upon us in a few days. Whichever way you look at it, plenty of that may include technology for the people on your gift list. And here to discuss what tech gifts might be hot this season and other big news in technology, we talk every month with Dwight Silverman, a columnist for the Houston Chronicle. Dwight, good morning.
Good morning.
We welcome your questions and comments as well in the conversation. You can call or text 713-440-8870, or you can email us, talk@houstonmatters.org, or comment in our live stream on the Houston Public Media YouTube channel. Speaking of technology, we're there now. Okay, so getting a sense of any particular tech or types of tech are you that, will be hot this season?
Well, it's, one of the things that happens is a lot of tech companies towards the end of the year, going into summer and early fall, release a slew of things. And so there's always a lot of things to choose from. If you have the cash and you're a gamer, this year probably the hottest thing is the Nintendo Switch 2, which is the follow-up to the original Nintendo Switch, which its breakthrough was essentially putting a pair of controllers on either side of a wide screen and, playing your games like that, or you could break them off and use it on a bigger screen. And this kind of continues that. Not all games are backwards compatible from the Switch to the Switch 2, but it is a really hot device right now. Sells for about $450, $460. You might be able to find a deal out there, but it's one of those things, where it really isn't going to be that hot.
I thought you were going to say you might be able to find one.
Sometimes those things. Right. I should have stopped there. Right. I should have just stopped there.
Yeah. Sometimes those are hard to come by.
Yes. One of the things that happened, in September and October, Apple releases its products. One of the really interesting things about this year's iPhones is that typically the low-end numbered phone, like this year the iPhone 17, is usually good, very good, but not as good as the Pro phones. This year, a lot of the features that have been in Pro phones are now in the iPhone 17, and for most people, this is probably the best iPhone to buy. The Pro models have better cameras, and particularly the Pro Max has much more storage, but the 17 is a real sweet spot. And if you're interested in deals on that, your carrier, a lot of carriers use the iPhone 17 as a loss leader, and you can get some pretty good deals from your carriers on that. The same thing is true with Google's Pixel line. They released the Pixel 10 this year. There's the 10 and the Pro XL. And in these cases, the 10 is actually a really good phone. And a little tip, the 9A released last year, which is their budget phone, is also a really good phone and also can be found for a lot of good deals.
Lots of deals this time of year. And you wrote this weekend about a new Android phone from OnePlus. What should people know about that, and what did you think of the latest model?
So I'm a big fan of OnePlus. I'm an iPhone user, but I really admire what OnePlus does. They tend to bring in flagship features at lower prices. They also have had, until this one, a very unique-looking design. So this
brought in some visual aids for our
yes,
YouTube
I did.
audience.
I did for those on YouTube.
You're always good for visual aid. I like that.
So this is the OnePlus 13. This was released in January. OnePlus is a Chinese company, and it is trying to align its release schedule with what it does in China. So this is a flagship phone. It's a great phone. This kind of what's called the dinner plate camera bump is very unique to it. I was on a plane earlier this month and saw a woman coming down the aisle on her phone, and it was a OnePlus, and it's very, very recognizable. This is the OnePlus 15, which was just released, isn't for sale yet in the U.S. because it was launched when the government shutdown was going on and the FCC hasn't approved it yet. So they're waiting for that. Once it is, it'll be for sale. But what does that look like to you?
Yeah, very iPhone-like.
Yes. And so they've changed the design. It's kind of more generic. It has a much more powerful processor. It's got a beautiful screen, and some of the internals are designed for mobile gaming. This is probably one of the best phones for gaming right now. The display has a 165 hertz refresh rate when gaming. That's amazing. The battery is huge. I've gotten close to 3 days in testing this, but the cameras aren't as good. There's some other issues about it, and the design is just kind of So I would say if you're interested in a OnePlus phone and you want something that's more well-rounded, the 13 is still out there and still available. If you're a gamer, this would be a great phone.
Yeah, it's interesting. All this technology in phones included so many specific, things to know. Like, hey, this is a great phone if you are using this and not interested in that, or vice versa, or whatever the.
Well, that and that's like the case, for example, with the iPhone Air, which was the super slim phone that Apple introduced. When you hold one, it's just amazing. It's great to hold, but it only has one camera. The battery is smaller. In fact, they introduced a clamp-on external battery just for it. And it is not sold well. It's not done very well. And there are rumors that they're holding off on a second version of it.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Michael Haggerty. We're discussing the latest developments in consumer technology with Houston Chronicle tech columnist Dwight Silverman. And if you have a question or comment, we still got a few minutes. Email us, talk@houstonmatters.org, or you can call or text 713-440-8870. You recently wrote that you've been kind of rethinking a stance you had on when you should install software updates on a computer and when you should wait. What did you used to think, and what changed to now? What are you thinking?
I've always been a proponent of, when you get a software update for a device, particularly one that you use and rely on every day, you should install it as soon as you can, mainly for security reasons. There are also features you may want. And in a lot of cases, when you do this, particularly if you have an older device, it's possible that it could slow down the device, and there may be other issues. But to me, it has been worth it to go ahead and do it, at the very least for security issues. Having seen what happened with iOS 26, which is the latest version of the software on iPhones, same with iPad OS, Mac OS, they all are now 26. Apple changed the numbering system so it relates to the year as opposed to the number of the version. They changed the design to use something called liquid glass, which has a lot of transparency and translucency, and people either love it or hate it. Apple has been refining it over the updates as they've gone along, but watching this roll out, and along with some various other things, for example, Microsoft released an update for Windows that bricked some solid-state drives on computers. No bueno. And so I'm kind of backing off a little bit on that. I think that security is still an issue, particularly on PCs, less so on iPhones. Definitely on Android, it remains a security issue. There's a lot of Android malware out there. But I think it is best probably to sit back, depending on how you use the phone, and wait several weeks to maybe a couple of months before you install a major update.
Sometimes it feels like there's never a good time. I mean, this laptop right here was just asking me to update earlier, and I'm like, hey, I got to host a radio show here.
Yes, right.
I don't have all day to sit around and wait for that spinning wheel, that progress bar or whatever. But lastly, let's get to I wanted to get to this sooner, but because it was big news, but it was last week, the big Cloudflare outage last week. Some internet stuff went down. That was kind of one of the biggest tech stories in recent weeks. I mean, what caused it, and any lessons to take away from that for the rest of us?
Well, we were talking about updates. Often that it happens because of an update. In this case, it was a log file that got too big in Cloudflare's system. And the problem is that the internet has evolved to the point that there are these services that big websites rely on so that their servers aren't hit directly, and either by attacks or what's known as edge computing allows the content that they have to go out to closer to where users are. Cloudflare is more of a security service. And in this case, companies that used Cloudflare suddenly were unreachable because of this. And a lot of businesses use it. So, for example, a lot of social media sites, X, formerly known as Twitter, Snapchat, was unavailable. Space City Weather, the weather blog that I help with, they also had difficulties because of this. And so it was big and small. what this points to is an issue of having single points of failure. That was the same thing that happened with the Amazon Web Services outage, earlier in the month. Is that when you rely on third parties to handle a critical part of your service, when they go down, you go down. I don't know what the answer to that is, but it is becoming an increasing problem as the internet becomes more sophisticated.
Yeah, seems startling in this day when we become so much more. Everything is so, relies on the internet so much, and these things they're just down. Plug it in.
There's a really good website when something goes down, and you're not able to get to something called Down Detector, and when you go to it, you get a list of sites where they're getting a lot of reports. And a lot of times when this happens, you could go and see all these big sites down. You could pretty much assume that one of these services is the culprit.
It all goes back to one point of...
That's right.
Yeah.
Single point of failure.
Something big went down that everybody's relying on. All right. Well, Dwight Silverman writes about consumer technology for the Houston Chronicle and joins us each month to discuss technology trends. Dwight, thanks, and happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
Still to come, how sports leagues go about deciding when to play their seasons and other developments in Houston sports as Houston Matters continues.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
Millennial caregivers who are also trying to build their own lives on All Things Considered from NPR News.
It's today at 3.
Support comes from Alley Theater with A Christmas Carol, presented by UT Health Houston. The story of Ebenezer Scrooge and his ghostly encounters with Christmas past, present, and future. Now through December 28th. alleytheater.org.
Support comes from the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, presenting Art and Life in Imperial Rome, Trajan and His Times, exploring the impact Emperor Trajan had on art and culture during his reign. Now on view, tickets at mfah.org.
Major League Soccer has announced plans to move its calendar and become a summer to spring league. Beginning in 2027, the season for teams like our own Houston Dynamo will begin in mid-July with the winter break beginning in mid-December and then playoffs taking place in May. To learn why and to consider how and why professional sports leagues go about playing their schedules when they do, we're joined now by Houston Press writer and Bleav in Astros podcast co-host Jeff Balke. Hey, Jeff.
Good morning, Mike.
So first, why is MLS doing this?
Well, the main reason is they want to align themselves with European leagues, which that is when their season is. This is a part and parcel of the idea of MLS being a pipeline to and from other sports leagues. And so since all the other soccer leagues sort of align themselves this way, with the exception being those in the Southern Hemisphere, they decided they wanted to go ahead and align themselves that way so they can move players back and forth from MLS to EuroLeagues or to La Liga or whomever it is.
So that can mean more stars from Europe coming to play here then, I imagine.
Maybe. I mean, ultimately, MLS, it's sort of like European League basketball versus the NBA. I mean, the better competition, the more money, the greater amount of fame, all of that stuff exists in Europe and in La Liga, not in the United States. So Major League Soccer still has that hurdle to overcome, but it does make it easier for players who might want to see what they can do in soccer in the United States. It certainly will make it easier for them to do so based on the scheduling.
Those are some reasons to do that, but what are some reasons maybe not to?
Well, I mean, one issue that you have is that soccer in the one thing about the summer is that there's really nothing going on in the summer outside of baseball. And baseball is unique because it's 162 games. So there's a bunch of games on all the time. So if you miss a baseball game, you're not going to fret over it too much. Soccer has basically almost the whole summer to itself. And so that's a huge difference from playing in the fall when you're going up against the Major League Baseball playoffs. You're going up against the beginning of basketball season, the heart of football season. It's a big difference in terms of trying to win over spectators, whether they're on television or in person.
Yeah, and imagine this could, I think I saw some comments about this. All right, this could be bad for teams who play in the north. They're going to be colder weather, and good for teams who play in the south, like Houston, who would have good weather. But I guess good weather here is often very, very uncomfortable hot. But
right,
yeah.
Well, weather. I think we underestimate how much weather has an impact on sports in general, and how it was even invented. I mean, most sports in the United States were invented in northern states before there were really any big cities in the South. And so, of course, who wants to play baseball at an outdoor field in Texas in the middle of summer? Nobody. Who wants to do it in upstate New York? Everybody, because the weather's just much, much nicer. The same thing goes for football. Football was invented for college. So it was basically the fall semester. You came in, you played football up until the winter break. It was over. It was too cold. You were done. It was only stadiums like the Astrodome that basically encouraged football to say, oh, you know what? We could go ahead and play through the winter. It'd be fine. And of course, crazy Green Bay Packer fans. And then basketball was actually invented to be played indoors because in the winter months in high school, following the Christmas break, there was nothing to do. There were no activities. It wasn't harvest time anymore. So in order to do something, they invented basketball. And that's why they called it barnstorming tours in the Midwest, because they would literally play in barns. And so it was something that was invented essentially to take over those winter months, which essentially basketball did. So I think we really do underestimate how much the invention of these sports was built around our basic weather.
Yeah, and the other thing being like lights, playing baseball during the day, during the summer months, playing it during the day when my beloved Cubs played for so long, only day games and that sort of thing. And the World Series was always played under the sun for so long, and so many things have changed.
Yeah, and also but it should be noted that now that sports is more of a spectator sport on television as much as it is in person, every league would love and that includes all of them, whether it's tennis or golf or whatever, would love to participate between November 1st and January 1st because that is the peak time of the year for advertising. It's when advertisers spend more money. It's when there's a greater competition for those ad spots on television. So the NBA and the NFL have really capitalized on that along with college football as well. And so I think every sport would love to play during that period of time. And Major League Soccer it's certainly opening itself up to that for a short period of time.
It's interesting to think about all those reasons that our calendar ended up like it did, and so many of them no longer relevant to our lives now. But I mean, is there anything else you wish was different about the professional sports calendar?
It's interesting to me that we are still, so many of the things we do, the school year, things like that are all still built around many of the traditions that we have going back to harvest time and farming and a variety of different things. Summer is still the idea is most people are off in the summer. That's when people go on vacation because it's nicer outside. I think what's changing so much is how we as an overall global society, we've changed a lot. And so I think we should embrace that. I do think that sports are becoming global. Like I said, basketball has become very popular in Asia. It's certainly very popular in Europe. It has been. Football has spread to Europe and other places. And with that comes different climates and different – look, the Southern Hemisphere is the summer when we're having winter. So there's no reason why these things can't proliferate. And so for me, I think – you should be able to fill the entirety of the schedule with stuff. There should be no reason to have August be just a complete and utter dead zone for sports. There should be lots of things for sports fans to indulge themselves in 12 months out of the year.
I guess to bring it back to the MLS and the Houston Dynamo, I guess this calendar change could be nice in the fact that you could be at some games in the fall, in November, December, February, when the weather here is actually finally nice for once.
Yeah, Houston, the Southern, and you do make a good point. Southern soccer franchises will definitely benefit from this because the weather here is going to be lovely for those times of year. Like playing in July sucks down here, but playing in November is going to be pretty ugly for people in New York, for example. So it definitely is an advantage for those teams, at least from a weather standpoint. Of course, Houston, who knows?
Yeah. Well, Jeff Balke writes for the Houston Press and co-hosts the Bleav in Astros podcast. Jeff, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thanks so much.
The Houston Matters team includes Craig Cohen, Joshua Zinn, Brenda Valdivia, Micho Jacob, and Laura Walker. Jared Carroll's our technical director. On tomorrow's show, we take a look at some of the issues and themes brought to light in the new movie, The Running Man, in this month's installment of The Bigger Picture, and why some of Houston's booming suburbs are sinking and what can be done about it. I'm Michael Haggerty. Join us tomorrow for those and other Houston Matters.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from